For Your Ears Only for the week of March 17th and St. Patrick's Day, I'm David Alpern.
I'm Eddie Robinson.
You know that the duty of the conclave was that of giving a bishop to Rome. It appears that my brothers, the cardinals, went to get it all over to the end of the world. And now, I would like to bless you, but first of all, I ask you for a favor. Before that the bishop blesses the people, I want to ask you that you ask the Lord to bless the bishop.
With characteristic humor and humility, Jorge Mario Bergoglio, previously Archbishop of Buenos Aires, Argentina, last week stepped out on a Vatican balcony as Pope Francis I and asked the cheering throng below to pray for him as Bishop of Rome before he raised his arms to bless them.
It was only one of many firsts for the new papacy, first in 6 centuries to follow a papal resignation, first of a Jesuit and non-European, and the first to begin with the new pope going personally to pick up his luggage, pay his hotel bill, and travel by bus with the cardinals who elected him at a time of extraordinary trial for the Roman Catholic Church. May God forgive you for what you've done, he told them at one point. To consider the past and future of the new pontiff, for Your Ears Only, we're joined by Patrick Hornbeck, Assistant Professor and Associate Chair of the Theology Department at Fordham University in New York. Welcome to the program.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
First, there's his choice of a name, Francis, which connects him with 2 sometimes rival church factions, the Jesuits and the Franciscans. Remind us of that history.
Sure. As you may know, there are a whole bunch of different religious orders in the Roman Catholic Church. And at first, people didn't know whether Pope Francis meant his name Francis to be Francis of Assisi, the founder of the Franciscans, or whether he meant Francis Xavier, who was one of the founders of the Jesuits. But the Franciscans are the older order. They go back all the way to 1209. Francis of Assisi was a wealthy Italian who decided to give up all of his wealth, all of his goods, and dedicate himself to a life of extreme poverty in following Jesus. The Jesuits came around about 300 years later. Again, another wealthy man, Ignatius of Loyola, was a Spanish nobleman and a soldier. He gets injured in battle. While he's convalescing, he reads books about Jesus, about the saints, and he decides to dedicate himself as a soldier for Christ. And he goes on and founds a new order, the Jesuits, in 1540. But the Jesuits and the Franciscans have not always been friends. In fact, for a period of about 40 years, around the time of the American Revolution, the Jesuits were actually suppressed. They were forced underground, and the Pope that did that, Pope Clement XIV, was himself a Franciscan.
And to what degree do you see that choice of name indicating the new Pope's intentions for building bridges between church factions?
Well, I think it's very significant. He later clarified that it was Francis of Assisi, this great protector of the poor, this great lover of nature, that he had chosen his papal name to reflect. And for a Jesuit to reach out to the founder of the Franciscan order, I think there's great symbolism in that. But I think one of the things that we're learning even more about Pope Francis is that he means that commitment to the poor very seriously. In fact, just this morning, he had an audience with the journalists who had covered his election. And at one point he said, I wish for a church that is poor and a church for the poor. And those are words that are really distinctive of what I think he's bringing to this position.
Was it well known that Bergoglio was runner-up in the last papal election, and should that have made his elevation last week less surprising?
Well, I think people who watch the Vatican very closely know. I think most Catholics around the world probably hadn't heard of Cardinal Bergoglio before he was elected earlier this week. And about half of the cardinals who were participating in this election also participated the last time around. And from what we know, all of this is officially secret. But from what we know, looking at the press and the leaks that have come out, he probably had as many as 40 votes out of about 110 last time. It's not normal for the cardinals to turn to the runner-up. Sometimes they're worried that might send the implicit message that they got it wrong the first time and that they have to fix their mistake. But I think in this case, with Pope Benedict having resigned, all of those rules, all of those conventions were a little bit more off the table than they normally would have been.
To what degree is it a mandate for a reform of church administration, control of financial corruption and the child sex abuse scandal so painful to parishioners and now increasingly so costly to the church in terms of court-ordered settlements?
That's a great question. I think also we should say costly to the church in terms of the allegiance of its people. I think many rank-and-file Catholics around the world look at their church with a bit of skepticism and a bit of distrust because of all the things that in the last few decades have come out about the sexual abuse of children by priests. I think it's too early to know with regard to that what the cardinals intended with the choice of Pope Francis. This is someone who's not worked in Rome before. So as a number of people have said, he has a bit more of a free hand. He's not been running a major Vatican office. He doesn't have those sorts of institutional loyalties in the Vatican. I think it's really significant. Normally, when a new pope is elected, he immediately returns to office all of the people who have official positions in the Vatican. Officially, all those people lose their job when the previous pope dies or, in this case, resigns. And Pope Francis hasn't chosen to do that yet. Just today, he said that those people could stay on temporarily, but he's not. So I think there's a lot of space for reform to happen if that's what he's interested in doing.
While Bergoglio was famous for his attention to the poor, he has been traditionally conservative on other issues that have undermined the Church's appeal: ordination of women, priestly celibacy, birth control, and abortion. Is there any reason or indication to believe he's about to build bridges over those divides?
I think every single one of the 115 voters in this conclave would have held positions identical to the ones that you just named. Under Pope John Paul II and under Pope Benedict XVI, one of the things that you had to do in order to become a cardinal was to espouse the Church's official teachings on matters like sexuality, women's ordination, and so on and so forth. So I'm not looking for this pope, I'm not expecting this pope to make any radical changes in that direction. Of the ones that you mentioned, I think the one that's most likely, if there were to be a change, would be with regard to admitting married men into the priesthood. That's a more recent development in Catholicism.
Do you think that Benedict's resignation itself, putting real-world situations like aging and health over tradition, gives the new pope a green light to deal with other painful realities that plague the Church?
I think Benedict XVI's resignation will go down in history as one of the most significant moments of the modern papacy. As you said, this is a pope acknowledging that he is human, that he is frail, that the good of the institution comes before his own personal good. And I think that's given a green light for a lot of the firsts that you've been talking about. Certainly, the way in which Pope Benedict demonstrated his own humanity has been followed by Pope Francis demonstrating his commitment to justice, his commitment to simplicity. And I think that probably augurs well. Now, what happens over the long run, I think we can only wait and see.
Patrick Hornbeck, Assistant Professor and Associate Chair of the Theology Department at Fordham University in New York.
Quote from the news, "To have the joy and stability of marriage that I've had for over 26 years, that I want all my children to have." That was Republican Senator Rob Portman of Ohio abandoning longtime opposition to same-sex marriage after learning that he has a gay son. And here's another. He rejects fundamental political reform, but he wants a cleaner, more efficient government. That was prominent Beijing political commentator Li Weidong on new Chinese leader Xi Jinping.
Next, the hidden threat of income inequality, for your ears only.